Hi, and welcome to another one-to-one thing. I am excited to go live again. Um, it is our virtual water cooler event. I am just making sure that the it goes live in Facebook as well. I have the Facebook group, the managers who lead, and we'll be there as well. So, welcome to another week. These weeks seem to be going fast. We're into the colder time of the year, which is doing my head in actually. So I'm not a fan of cold weather. So it's my Jamaican heritage, I guess. But I'm looking forward to an interesting show or an interesting drop in, as I always am. Excuse me. And we'll see who shows up and what we talk about. Last few weeks have been very interesting, just and insightful for me, just to have some deeper conversations, some more interesting discussions on various things. Keeping it light and but keeping it somewhat relevant and interesting, if you like. So I am looking forward to. Paul is joining me here. That's great. Paul, how are you, buddy?
Hey Steve, good to see you. Happy Wednesday. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you fine. You can hear me, okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's good to see you. How have you been?
I have been well. I've been well. Celebrated a birthday this weekend just gone. So that's that's always a fun time, a chance for reflection and uh, appreciation of having another year. Sometimes you can't take these things for granted.
Yeah, for sure. Happy belated birthday. I bet that was a fun thing for you.
Yeah, it was good. The Donster, I love that.
There you go. I was going to say the Dunster, the monster,
Donster the monster.
but
No, I love that. That's great. How are you doing, Don? Are you're obviously you're home now from your various travels.
well, we're heading to Nashville and Knoxville Friday for the weekend.
Okay.
Got a friend of mine who's retired end of August, so I think it's a surprise
Oh, nice.
retirement party. So hopefully he's not listening.
Don't tell him.
Don't tell him. Yeah, we're not connected on Facebook, so
Oh,
um, but it'll be fun.
oh,
Do a little bit of hit the Grand Old Opry and do some stuff in Nashville, and then head over to Knoxville and do some bird watching and some sightseeing, see some friends. And,
wow. I
yeah,
love.
but we're just trying to go somewhere every couple of weeks.
Yeah, you are such an you're an inspiration in that respect. I saw some of your posts, all the places you've been or going, and that's cool. I like people embracing the opportunity to go places.
Yeah, yeah
This Yates.
summer.
Sorry, Don. Go ahead.
No, I say we've hit Alaska, all of Utah, Colorado, Grand
Wow.
Canyon in Arizona, Tampa, Florida, Miami, Florida, New York City. It's been quite the whirlwind.
Again, that's America's a
Oh
it's
man,
a big place.
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Let me just
Please.
welcome Chris to the call. Chris
Thank
Yates,
you.
fellow Brit. He's in the UK.
But
Nice.
this isn't reversed. I've got family in Half Moon Bay,
Okay, there you go.
in the Bay Area,
Where is Half Moon Bay?
just outside San Francisco.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
Beautiful.
my wife's sister lives out there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Way too many people out there, but beautiful area.
yeah. That
Great
that is
place.
that that is so cool. I was going to say something about yeah, the size of America. When I was traveling backwards and forwards doing the seminars and events with Tony Robbins, before I moved out to the States, a few people in my close circle were saying, "Oh, you got to, why don't you come out here and move? Why don't you move out here?" And I was like, and they said, well, one guy I spoke to and really kind of impressed me was that he said, like, it's the one place you can get the diversity of cultures, the diversity of climates, the diversity of terrains, you know, all on the one contiguous space. I mean, I've been to Hawaii as well, but in terms of you know mainland US, there's so much to explore, that you know it's an opportunity once you're here, once you're there or here, and we're talking about it, the chances to explore places, and I did some explore.
Such variety too. Wow.
Yeah, I went to some places, but I probably, well, that, regardless of how often you travel, there's always going to be a place that someone's going to say, "Oh, have you been?" and then that kicks in.
Yeah,
But
we hit a lot of the national parks in Utah. Arches, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef, Zion, Bryce Canyon. What's interesting is just on Facebook yesterday, it's like, here's the top 10 things you need to see in Utah. And I think I did one of those 10. I didn't know there was all these more out there.
yeah,
There's a list of top 10 things you should see in Georgia, and I'm the first one on that list. So that's pretty interesting, talking about top 10s.
Next time
I heard Steve's in the top 10 for all of Britain, not just London, all of Britain. Steve's in the top 10.
stop
so,
it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going
next time I'm in Georgia.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Don, it's so good to see you, Mr. Gleason. I haven't seen you in months. I haven't seen you in probably half a year, to be honest. I mean, you've dropped in for a little bit, but it's been quite a while.
We were just talking about all my summer exploits.
Yeah, I mean, you left as Mr. Don Gleason, or Air Force Commander or whatever it was, and now you're back as the Donster. You really you must have had a chilling summer. Wow, the Donster.
Yep.
I mean, did you make that up yourself, or was that from the wife? How did you get the?
No, I think we were in Munich at Oktoberfest, and somebody looked at me and said, "Donster the monster." It might have been after a few beers. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, I've got a few nicknames, but
Yep.
I guess none of them. I guess half of them would expose my real name, so I have to leave it as it is.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Only one of them doesn't expose my real name, but it's not the most appropriate story.
There you go. There's a bunch of us that are regulars to this. Chris is net new, so I want us to welcome Chris joining us. This I'll set the tone. I guess there's a theme.
What's the agenda
is that
today,
there isn't one. This is literally a virtual water cooler. It's an opportunity for people to come on and chat stuff. It's usually not usually. It's always encouraging. It's always positive. It's always an uplifting space. I don't want people to feel like they're being sort of sidelined or maligned when they
It's
come
all
in
just
or
one
listen
big
to
promotion for the One to One Thing podcast and the Managers Who Lead Facebook group, both amazing platforms where you can cultivate life lessons, get life advice, connect with amazing individuals, and learn how to be a manager who leads with workplace values, community, culture, and empathy.
Well, Chris,
Or
Chris
you can eavesdrop in on conversations
Senior
to
marketing
get a
man.
sample of life.
Mr. I've got to turn him down. I do have the power actually to just mute the guy.
I would never forget.
But never exercised it. That's cool. But like I said, Chris, it's a place. This is a regular spot for me. Whether it's me by myself or people just drop in. We're all guys here today, but it's not exclusively a male space. But it's an opportunity for us to just talk and share. So go around the room and introduce yourselves. Paul, Donster, Mr. Whiskey. You go last, Mr. Whiskey.
Thank you.
We'll start over here with Paul.
Yeah, Chris, nice to meet you. My name is Paul Deitch, originally born and raised in Hawaii, but I moved to Florida in March of 2022, and majority of my professional career has been in the finance space, but for the past, I want to say 2-3 years, I've been working with the 50 plus age demographic and doing LinkedIn training and strategy to help that generation build profit and presence. So Steve and I met at an audio event that I used to do on LinkedIn, and we become good friends. And he's one of my friends from across the pond.
There you
Nice to
go.
meet you.
Great.
Thank you.
The
Yeah.
pond being a whole ocean.
Don, you're next.
Am I on your left? I guess I am. At least I am
Yeah.
for me too. So Don Gleason, 27 years Air Force, 9 years corporate. Now, 8 years as an entrepreneur, career transition coach. Love doing what I'm doing, helping people find a job that energizes them so they can have the life that fulfills them. And doing a lot of volunteering. And now, as we said already, a lot of traveling, seeing this beautiful world, really trying to really focus in on my relationship with God and just appreciate all he has created.
Amen to that.
You know, Don's selling himself short. He also takes people, especially military veterans, and pulls the story out of their resume. In a cookie cutter society with AI generated resumes and copy paste, he brings the story, he quantifies it into things that people can actually know what you did, not just how you did it. And that's how he helps people get a job like that.
Okay,
Right.
you're
What about
next.
you, Mr.
It's fun. Thank you.
Check in the mail, right?
He's everybody's marketing man today.
I know, I should do marketing. That's an idea.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stuff that under my hat for later.
Go.
Oh, you want me to go? I thought
Luke,
Mr. Yates
come-
was next. I mean, I don't want to cut him in line, but yeah, Mr. Whiskey.
Changing on the fly here.
I am a author, speaker, preacher, comedian, entrepreneur, and more, singer in training, weighted hula hoop master. I do a lot of things, study Hebrew, study Greek. I mostly specialize in suicide prevention, awareness, drug and addiction recovery, pornography, alcohol, gambling, whatever it may be, military mental health, women's pregnancy support, abortion alternatives, and then working also just in fitness, mentorship, self-improvement in general. I know Steve from a variety of different events. Paul's a great guy. I'm like Paul, but all my friends are 80 plus demographic, so it's a little bit
Thanks.
different. Yeah, and or 60-year-olds sometimes, depends on the day. I know Don was on my show. Steve was on my show. Paul is going to be on my show. We're trying to arrange an in-person meetup some point. I got to text him about some events coming up this weekend that he might be able to join me at. And yeah, my only other input is, Chris, if you ever have a son, you got to name him Bill Yates. They're going to be like, what, people are really going to open some doorways for that.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to name up my sons after the different members of the Beatles, but I didn't quite, get to form a
Bingo.
You didn't have enough sons to make a band.
I managed to get George as the middle name of the first one.
There you go.
Anyway, yeah, Chris Yates. I feel a little bit overwhelmed, but
Don't worry.
I'm sure I can either just tune in under the radar or perhaps even contribute. You've all got quite impressive resumes there.
Whatever you do, I'll multiply by 10, but make
Right.
it still realistically expectational for people. So whatever you're about to say, don't worry, I got you. I can turn it around into something.
Wonderful.
I can help you deliver it with agility.
So in terms of age demographic, I'm only just 50.
That's Paul's best friend right there. Y'all gotta hang out.
And just in terms of career, I'm actually an engineer or a consultant. Just specialize in HVAC and energy in buildings and stuff like that. So this is going to be an interesting ride. So
Yeah.
I'll buckle the seatbelt and join in.
Combining you and Don actually is something I can say to educate people on. This is a fun fact about Japan I didn't know. So speaking of travel, Mr. Gleason, I went to Japan recently, and
cool.
Yokosuka, right? All the Navy sailors would call it Yokosuka. I say Yokosuka because I'm not like I think it's dumb. The reason the Navy sailors call it Yokosuka instead of Yokosuka is because Yoko Ono was the wife or the girlfriend of John Lennon, and apparently they blame her. These Navy sailors are like, she ruined the Beatles, so they refuse to say her name. They refuse to say Yokosuka because they despise this woman. But from what I've heard, now the Beatles were kind of before my time, but I've heard that they were kind of already kind of splitting up, having some issues before Yoko came in. So maybe she was the icing on the cake. But for me personally, I'm not going to change the name of a place because I don't like that person necessarily. Like I say Yokosuka. I mean, I'm not going to be like Yokosuka. We don't speak of Yoko. I mean, it's just like, you ever see Harry Potter and they're like, Voldemort? No, no, no. The one we don't name, the one we don't speak of. I'm not doing all that. That's no.
That's in.
Fun fact. I found that out the hard way.
That's an interesting segue in terms of what we name and what it means, what
Yeah.
meaning we associate to a name. And
Well, I actually joined a petition there. I had started a petition. I had 500 Japanese citizens sign it. I said we should change this to Steve Wright Utopia Land. And not 500 Japanese citizens were on board. The rest said, that's stupid. Who's Steve Wright? I said, well, you got to join his Facebook group to meet him.
who I want to know who the 500 were. how you convinced them.
Yayoi Komiyama's distant cousins.
pulling all the threads
Wait,
of
I do gotta say, it was
those
funny.
networks.
For those of you who don't know Yayoi Komiyama, she shares a birthday with Steve Wright. Happy birthday, Steve. 4 days passed, but you know,
Thank you.
60 plus. I'm just gonna say 60 plus for the next 10 years.
There you go.
You
Thanks.
look great. Yayoi Komiyama, she runs Brain and Belly. She's been on this event a couple times. And I went to a restaurant and it was called Yayoi.
She's cool.
And I was like, what are the chances? I texted her. I was like, are you in Japan right now? Because look what I found. And she was like, no, I was in Japan when you weren't there on purpose to avoid you. So yeah.
which
I
is
added a little heartbreak emoji to that text.
it's something some people might do actually, Mr. Whiskey. Just they'll go to a place before or after you do.
Yeah. Yeah, don't go after I go. You know, the police will be still running around.
But I don't have a theme. I don't have a theme per se. Although I will share something that sparked a conversation between myself and Chris with regards to I guess politics and religion are not necessarily taboo subjects on the water cooler. There he goes, covers his ears. So I don't want to dismiss them out of hand. At the same time, I don't want to be going down sort of polarizing discussions. So with that caveat said, Chris and I were reflecting and talking around some of the more, I guess, polarizing news items, both stateside and the UK. Typically around sort of migrant sentiment and a more right-leaning approach to politics. And I'm picking my words kind of carefully because I don't want to be activating people or creating anything out of hand.
You don't want Disney to take you offline, right?
And bring me back in 5 days.
That's right.
But at the same time, this is something that Trevor Noah said in, I think it was either a video short or in one of his podcasts. He had a comment about people talk to him and they say they start a discussion by saying, I wouldn't say this in public, but, and then they'll go into something that they will tell Trevor. And Trevor responded to this person and said, do you know what the thing, because if you can tell me and you caveat it with you can't say it in public, that discussion is the thing that ought to be said in public. You've got to say it in a way that is that you would feel comfortable sharing it. You won't be maligned. You have to be sort of articulate with your argument. You can't dismiss it out of hand because you're talking to a wider audience than just this person. So don't be lazy is my point. Don't throw out expletives, don't throw out things that are just going to trigger people just because you're talking to either your audience, your particular person or your particular audience. You've got to say something that is going to sit well or at least be understood by other people. All that to say, we've seen a sort of a rise in a it feels xenophobic in terms of people looking after their own, even if they don't know even if they don't know who their own is. But there's this sort of corralling of a theme or a genre. And it's interesting. Another friend of mine in my network, Dr. Tara Goddard, shared a post with. We have two flags. We have the English flag, which is a red cross on a white background, and it's part of the Union Jack, which is made up of the traditional UK flag that you see. And there's in some circles there's a connotation with the St. George's flag, the English flag, being a bit more sort of right leaning, and it's been I don't know if I could liken it to the Confederate flag. I don't know if there's an easy parallel in the US to the UK with regards to icons and what it means, but again, it was something that we're seeing more of that, and I don't know what it always means, but I know growing up, there was a time in my earlier life where it was a lot more vitriolic. It had a much stronger connotation, and I still remember that. I don't carry that forward because I know that it's a different time, but I think this is. I'll open the floor because I talked a lot. In terms of what Mr. Whiskey was saying about and the changing of a name. The US have changed forts. They've changed military bases names, and there's this thing. There's an association with a name, and what it's supposed to mean and what it doesn't mean, and so on. And people have their different perspectives on it. But I want to open up the floor just in terms of what you're seeing in your space. What are the icons, whether it's a name or a flag or a symbol that is either being maligned or misunderstood, or maybe even activating or triggering for people or for particular people. Go, Chris.
Can I just expand on
Yeah.
our because we're in the UK, so to our American friends, so just really to expand on what Steve's been as filtered through here in the UK. There's been some kind of initiative called Unite the Kingdom, but it's seen flags being put up everywhere, absolutely, just on lampposts, on anything that will hang a flag or anything you can paint a flag on. So you don't have them in the States. We have roundabouts, sometimes there's like a mini roundabouts, like a little white disc of tarmac Adam at a junction between some roads,
like a four-way stop, but with a circle in the middle.
Stop, but it's a little circle with a red. Somebody comes along, paints a red St. George's cross on the red. It's a real phenomenon. It's gone a bit nuts, and so it's there's a spectrum of people who are in approval of this. Many seem to think, well, it's our flag, it's fine, it's this is it's fine to be patriotic, and it is fine to be patriotic, of course, but there's also a distinct element that is very much focused on immigration as a demographic, and very specifically focused at the moment on the subject of people arriving in boats over the English Channel, many of whom appear to come from Afghanistan. We have theories like the white replacement theory. We also have the fifth column, which is that these are mainly young men. A lot of them are young men. They're young men of fighting age. So that there's a kind of paranoia almost, and the algorithms online seem to be
I think
so. But again, going back to Steve and I are of a similar age, and I just fessed up. I was on LinkedIn and I just fessed up, and it was like, you go back to the 80s. I was actually one of those people telling, using racist language, and and I totally, absolutely, immigration is a subject that needs to be carefully considered, but with respect to its connection to race or even religion, that should be a completely that shouldn't have any bearing on the matter. It's legal status, and also to an extent whether we can help. We want to help. We want to help people fleeing from terrible situations if we can. So I think that's how I couched it. But I wanted to echo that there are racist sentiments mixed up with this, even if many people think it's quite innocent. I'm petering out a little bit. I don't know if I expanded on this here or
no.
I think where's the line between illegal immigration and refugees? And at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge we can't take an entire country's population into another country or multiple countries into a country, especially when our countries aren't able to take care of our own people, let alone others. My issue, because Steve, what you brought up is actually very prominent in Georgia. Georgia has a lot of Civil War history. There are Confederate statues down the street, specifically not honoring these Confederate soldiers, but most of them are grave sites. Most of them are actually memorials and graveyards. And there is a lot of people trying to tear them down, erase them. A lot of the veterans who have come on my show served at Fort Bragg, which they tried renaming Fort Liberty. One of the things that boggles me is I had heard about how much money it costs to change all the signs and rename everything. Definitely a waste of money in my opinion. But I think to your point, so these were named after, Confederate leaders, quite a while ago. But there hasn't been Confederate activity there for years. It's just the name of the base, right? People who are serving at Fort Bragg aren't going there saying, I'm a Confederate. Oh, Fort Bragg. Mr. Bragg was a great guy, right? It's just the name of their base. Most of these guys join the military to pay for college or because they got a girl pregnant in senior year. I mean, that was what most of my division I served with. That was their motivation for joining the military, right? It's not Hardy American Heroes. I was with the Suicide Squad. I don't think it's, it's just there's a line between like good change and wanting to destroy history and the consequences of it. But like again, the desecration of these grave sites that, regardless, and I had a huge confrontation with a person who said that like, certain people, like their deaths shouldn't be respected. They shouldn't get a funeral. They shouldn't get a grave site. And he said Confederate soldiers were one of those people. And I said, at the end of the day, where do we draw the line between different moral disagreements and respect human life, especially fallen human life? So it's definitely a thing because, I got asked the question then, well, Mr. Whiskey, what about Muslim radical terrorists who died, in 9/11? Do you think they're grave sites should be made and respected. So it is quite a morally complicated subject. And I think some of the desecration and destruction of history ties into that. And I don't know if you were going towards the replacing history. I know you mentioned renaming things. That's been going on in America for sure. Especially in Georgia is one of those areas.
Thank you, Mr. Whiskey, for that perspective on it. And welcome, Carla. Don't worry
My
about
favorite hooker. Welcome here.
Chris is a long time
Thank
friend
you,
of
Mr.
mine.
Whiskey. I
and he-
said, wow, I popped in. I popped in on a hot topic.
on a pretty heavy subject matter. Yeah.
on a hot topic. And
Very.
Steve had one beer this morning. We said, Steve, don't get political. He had one beer, and then he started talking about xenophobia. We're like, oh boy, here he goes.
Well,
He's practicing for Thanksgiving.
I don't know how much of the run up you heard before joining us, Carla. Just in terms of it's something on Chris's heart. And we're friends. We caught up on another thread within LinkedIn, and I said, it's something we can certainly broach in terms of a drop in chat. And as I said, the preamble was that politics and religion are not off topic, as long as we give it the appropriate respect and responses. And it's interesting, like Chris mentioned, that the connotation of the flags back in his earlier days had much more of a meaning. Is that fair to say, Chris?
I'm not sure what I said actually. I did
with regards to you being in that space where you're the one using racist slurs, you're the one believing that, and the icons of the time back then. Well, I remember skinheads. I mean, that was basically, I lived in London. It was, group of, typically white youth with shaved heads and Doc Martens, red braces, red laces, just this iconic dress style theme. And as a school kid, I would take other routes home to avoid meeting groups of these kids, not similar age or maybe a bit older. Usually if they're older, I would definitely find a different way, because if they're my age, I might sort of front to them. But and it was just one of those things. As a first generation Brit from my mum coming to the UK, a lot of the mindset around migration was assimilation. You get on with the society that you join. It wasn't a matter of trying to carve out your own little space in that society. And we didn't have as much agency back then. I guess my mum didn't, and she shared that with me in terms of, keep your head down, do well in school. You've got things that are against you, so work hard, avoid trouble. So never been in trouble, never been arrested, never been in the police station, let alone anything like that. So all that to say, it's just interesting, Chris being on this call, and generations later, seeing something in the general society now that, I don't know if it harks back to those days or you think it's different.
Yeah, you're asking me. I think so. I mean, it is a little bit. It's like many things I'm kind of seeing in the media at the moment. I'm checking my drink to see, checking the Kool-Aid, what brand of Kool-Aid I'm drinking. But yeah, it's like we kind of. I mean, it was, just again, I'll just reiterate, Carla. I was on LinkedIn. Somebody had posted about their experience coming back on the train as a brown person on a carriage full of Unite the Kingdom supporters. They just returned from a rally in London where this character called Tommy Robinson had presided over over everything, and they were draped in their English flags and swearing, and he just kind of broke the ice with them, and it was a widely shared LinkedIn post. So I thought, well, I'll just chime in and I'll say, well, if we go back to the 80s, and I was a teenager in the 80s, but I was at that time, I was using racist language, telling jokes, but racist jokes, sexist jokes. And I'd like to put it down to I grew up in a bit of a parochial backwater, but it wasn't the case really. I at least had mixed race friends, and so I kind of shared this, and there seemed to be it was cathartic actually to share it. It's not something I've shared online before, in all honesty. And I've shared it with very few people as well. And then suddenly I was sharing it with, I don't know how many thousand people had interacted with this post. And it was overwhelmingly positive what came back. And I thought, there has to be a conversation, it was something that it was cathartic because I felt like I should have shared it years ago with the Black Lives Matter, when George Floyd period just a few years ago. But I was just too timid at the time. It's I'm just faltering now.
It's understandable.
I need a bit of backstory on what.
No, it's understandable.
So for all
You
of
just
us,
said the Black Lives Matter, and and what you just shared. I have a cousin that I met during Black Lives Matter online through a mutual friend who's a minister in the Episcopal Church, and we didn't know that we had a mutual friend until we met, because we didn't know each other existed. And she is a hooker. Her last name, her maiden name was Hooker, and my name is Hooker because I've never been married, and that's my family's name. But we found out that her great-grandfather is probably mine as well.
Right.
And she showed me pictures of him and her great-great-grandmother, and my dad and I saw similar features in many of our family members. I mean, strong features. So she and I met. She came to, ironically, I invited her to a play, and the play was here at the Temple Theater, and it was about a civil rights movement march and kind of a journey through. It's a one-man show that Mike Wiley does. It's really good. If you ever have a chance to watch any of his productions, check it out, or check them out. But she was really enjoying it. And then later I find out, because my cousin and I have gotten pretty close since then. We just talked. We stayed on the phone almost 4 hours on Saturday when she found out I was sick. So we were on the phone for a while. But anyway, she is a Democrat, and she's like a staunch Democrat that goes up to Raleigh and protests on the steps, and she waits to get arrested and all that stuff. And then I am her cousin, her black cousin. I can say it, and she's my white cousin. I am a Republican. So we can get along. Her sisters had cut her off completely when they found out that she apologized to me about the great-grandfather thing. Now, she's done DNA tests. I haven't done any DNA tests to see. We can really find out if we're really blood related, but we really strongly believe with our grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents and so on, all being in the same cemetery. The only thing separating them is the part of the hill that they're on. Hers are at the top, mine are at the bottom. We really believe, and I'm 5'9", she's 5'10", and we can finish each other's sentences. And when we when we talked the first time over the phone, we both had this some kind of spiritual thing that happened with us. And we both are empaths. We both are very spiritual. We're not really religious per se, but very, very spiritual with a belief in God. And we both felt like our ancestors were kind of joining together in the heavens or something. It's hard to explain. She and I can explain it to each other, but to try to verbalize it for someone else is a little difficult. But that's my kindergarten definition of that. But I get it. I get it. And I get what you're saying. And we said we're going to probably end up writing a book or doing a podcast together because it's a very unusual friendship. But I love her dearly and she loves me dearly. And we're total opposites, but then we're one and the same when it comes to that's my cousin. I love my cousin. And her sisters have since reunited with her, and they have forgiven her, or she's forgiven them, and they're all one because they know she's not going to stop communicating with me, and she's not going to stop feeling bad about having apologized to me for what happened. And I told her she didn't owe me an apology because it wasn't her that did it, but I get it. But we have an unusual friendship because of this, but there's so much love there for each other.
Well,
so, I haven't shared that story on a podcast with anybody, but you all are the first now.
Revelations.
Yeah, I'm putting our business out
This is
here.
beautiful. Something you just said, and well, it's a couple of things. One is the feeling that two people have said that they, and myself, there's things I've shared today that I haven't necessarily shared in this sort of forum and platform before. And so it's good to feel, in a sense, safe to share it and understood when you share, because sometimes that's the thing that stops you from sharing. You're not sure if you're going to be understood or you're going to feel safe by sharing. So I appreciate us being able to feel collectively safe to share and do those things. And the other thing that you said, Carla, which I mean, it could be a topic in and of itself, is that we are, you used the phrase, we are total opposites and we are one and the same. And a lot of the I guess like Chris said, the algorithms are really leaning to total opposites. And there's very few platforms or areas where we can look at being one and the same.
Yeah.
This is what Paul said in the a previous episode of the Restream. Paul had said, when you ask why do you think that way, instead of, like, you remember he said the question to get the middle ground, because he said right now it's just like a no man's land in the middle. But I'm going to need some more context because I'm not British. This Unite the Kingdom movement, how would you, what is that? What is like the goal and kind of the ideologies behind that?
Oh wow, I'm confused as to how it came about. It just kind of appeared as a social media thing, really. But I think there was something about a council in Birmingham so probably a false story as well, but there may have been an element of truth. A council in somewhere like Birmingham, UK, not Alabama, taking down a Union Jack flag or a St. George's Cross flag, and there was a recoil over social media, and then some kind of initiative to put them up everywhere. All I can think is it must have taken a certain amount of organization, because they're absolutely everywhere. It would have taken somebody with a cherry picker, like a basket, on an arm, to go up and put a lot of these things up. I think there've been a lot of people going up on step ladders, but
Well, it's interesting in terms of like mirroring America. So one thing I don't agree with, of course, is we have a lot of people burning the American flag, disrespecting the American flag, right? And that feels like kind of similar, if I'm understanding you correctly. They didn't burn it, but they just took it down from what you're saying. But it amazes me that like the heart of the British people was like, oh, you took it down, now we're going to put it everywhere. I feel like, I guess there's been some retaliation to the burning of the flag, but you didn't see that kind of movement where boom, there was American flag everywhere. Like try to burn them all. Like there wasn't that kind of retaliation. Obviously, people are upset about it. I mean, there's been upsets for people kneeling during the national anthem and stuff like that. It's interesting to see here you are all the way across the ocean, different government system, different kind of people, but some kind of similar, almost exactly the same issue. It's just interesting, you know. And I've never really thought about illegal immigration in Britain, but when you were talking about all these boats of refugees and that stuff, you know, I don't follow British politics because I don't live over there, so I don't know what's going on over there. But to hear you talking about immigration issues, people how they're treating the flag issues, changing the names and stuff, it makes the world so much smaller in a sense. You know, it's like here's America mirroring, you know, Britain and stuff like. Yeah, I mean, I'm interesting. I know I gotta ask y'all too if like, so I know one of the jokes is that America is the only place that has school shootings, and we've had a lot recently. But is that something that happens in the UK at all, or is the UK like completely free of that kind of stuff?
The last school shooting was the 90s, wasn't it? It was Dunblane, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Andy Murray was our tennis, our now retired tennis star. If you can call, Andy's a bit of a star. He's a really nice guy, and he has been pretty good at tennis. Let's be fair. He was one of the older kids in that school, so that I can't remember the name of the shooter. Wasn't Thomas Hamilton, was it? I think he was the Hungerford shooter.
I remember the town.
And 96. That was 1996.
Yeah, our last one was like a week ago, you know, or so. So it's crazy. And the one that definitely upset me. I mean, it's just so sick to me. You know, I've done episodes specifically on school shooting psychology and security and how to make schools safer and stuff like that. And I mean the mentality of it too. Like it's just unless you went to that school and had like a personal vengeance against those children, if you're just some guy trying to make like or gal trying to make like a statement, it's really sick that you would just kill innocent children to make that statement. You know, it's just and even if you went to that school, I'm not saying it's right. It's just the motivation is more in alignment in terms of like understanding why they would go to that school, right? They were bullied and outcasted there, and then they hated those kids. But if you just chose a school to make like a public scene, it's like, I mean, one of the motivations obviously is they know it's unarmed, right? In America, like at least in Georgia, you could go to a mall or somewhere else. This is a constitutional carry state. You could go into a mall, try to shoot someone, and you got like 50 guns pointed at you, right? It depends on the state. But schools, they know. Maybe there's 1 or 2 armed guards or nowadays. Originally, you know, none at all. So it is it's safer for the shooter, so to speak, in terms of that. But it's just ridiculous, you know. And to hear that y'all haven't had one since the 90s, like that's so shocking because we've had 2 or 3 in the past month. You know, so it's just interesting.
It feels it's we're not policymakers and we don't have we're not armed with all the information. So I can't prescribe any solution other than it feels like a something that could be looked at upstream. By the time you've cordoned off a school and captured the shooter or contained the situation, all of the things you're doing after the event are so far downstream that you're just kind of you're controlling the narrative, if you like. There's so much thing. The reason we don't have school shootings or we don't have that sort of gun violence is that we're not a society that is used to guns. I remember growing up, and you know, back in the IRA days, you know, the Irish, the troubles in Ireland, and there were bombings in the UK. That was the first time you actually saw an armed officer. I was a full-grown adult before I recognized police were armed, and then there were only particular forces that were armed. So it's never been in that sort of culture of of gun use. So it
Well,
feels
it
like there's
poses
things
a
things
question
that be
then.
done upstream.
It poses a question: if the UK did have a bunch of guns, would people choose to then go shoot schools? It's like
That too.
like the gun is right. It's a tool, just like AI or a hammer, right? It's how people use it. The question is like if a bunch of like is it even in that culture to go shoot up schools, or would they shoot one another? Like what would they do with the guns? I
Mm.
guess right. That's the real social experiment. And I'm not saying we should drop off a bunch of guns in the UK and see what happens, right? I'm not
Please
for
don't.
that. But it does pose that question of what would people do with that? My theory, there would be Jack the Ripper Part Two. Yeah, it would just be a gun instead of knives.
Mm.
That's my theory.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
Steve.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go.
I mean, I've just been hearing like a lot of different things, and I think like context is so important to these conversations. Like everybody always talks about a lot of the school shootings, but then when you look into the shooters, they weren't mentally stable people. More often than not, they're usually people that people are wondering like, how is this person not in a mental health institution? And I think like one of the things that's been so interesting in this conversation of just listening and hearing people talk about like history and how you intertwine like racism and all these different connection points in there is that one of the things, and this goes back to like a lot of the that I've experienced working with my demographic, is that like the world's completely different now than it was then. And it's like a lot of the way that people grew up then versus the resources and the way that people are growing up now are like completely different. And I think like I've had this conversation a lot when I'm having conversations with my clients, and even on like my end when I'm interacting with other people in my generation and the way that they're speaking about the older demographic. And it's like people are trying to hold people accountable to things back then when they didn't have the resources that we do now. So it's like they didn't necessarily know. And if you look at the way that the world was, a lot of people were just kind of, I don't want to say like following the norm, but it seems now more than ever, because of the resources that we have, you have a lot more like innovation and variety in the way that people are handling things. And it reminds me so much of being in Hawaii, because it's like there's a lot of historical, because of what happened in the past and the way that there's a lot of local people there who are essentially living in the past, because of what happened. And when I guess for me it was always so interesting because I lived there for 25 years, and my experience was a lot more deeper than a 2-week vacation to the hotels and the beaches and things like that. But it was a very kind of racist environment, just like the language that people would use, and not really like understanding the slang and the terms that people would use, right? And there was a lot of resentment there. And I think a lot of it really just comes down to people are more geared toward kind of proving their point, and they want to be right versus seeking to understand. And going back to what Dr. Whiskey was saying, out of like all the events and things that I've done on LinkedIn, I've talked about just about everything from politics to the most vulnerable topics, and I haven't ever gotten into one argument, because I always ask people that one question, which is like, why do you think that way, right? And it's like, to what Chris was saying as well, because my take on it from what I was observing, it kind of seemed to me more of like a supremacy thing. Not maybe like to the extreme of like what we have in the US of like the KKK or a lot of the white supremacists, but if you look back at history, there was a time where like the UK was the superpower of the world, right? Like that's why we had the Revolutionary War and like all these things, was because we were trying to break free from that. So I think there could be a lot of that to it, but it just sounds to me like a lot of people are just hanging on to a lot of past things. And I always say, like, you have to look at things for what they are versus what you want them to be or what they were. And I feel like that's the big challenge with people, right? Is like you
Mm.
look at who people were, you're so used to like how they were, their patterns and all those different things. And a lot of times I think it's hard for people to understand the aspect of not only like change is possible, but also I feel like for a lot of people deep down, they don't want the change to happen. So it's like they're in denial, about what's going on in
Mm.
real time. And that's just kind of my take on the situation.
Yeah.
Well, that's why Jesus said, "Do you not know that an honor is without profit, or profit is without honor only in his hometown?"
Yeah.
Like the people you grew up with, they'll always just see you as like who that person was. Like I can imagine going to a high school class reunion, and I feel like people would not believe anything that I do now. And I think that goes for a lot of places.
Mm.
People are like, I feel like if even parents, I feel like sometimes you just see your kids as how they were when they're kids. And I think, especially like my siblings, like it's hard for me to see them as who they are now and not like who I grew up with, especially when you grew up with them. But Paul, what I want clarification on, are you saying the Hawaiian natives are kind of racist towards America, or are you saying Americans were racist towards the Hawaiian natives?
Well, I mean, that's kind of like a loaded question. I guess it kind of goes both ways. But I would
Okay.
say it was more a lot of the local people holding like resentment because of like the overthrow and all that type of stuff, which I mean I completely understand. And my whole response to it was, but it's like you have to control what you can control, right? Like
Right.
that's
How
happened
do we move
50,
forward?
60 years ago, right? And I think like to your point though, I guess for me I kind of have a different experience because the kind of the trend with a lot of people from Hawaii is like you don't ever leave, right? Like and the fact that I've gotten to travel internationally and do the things that I've gotten to do, it goes back to that whole idea of impossible equals impossible, right? Like, and Steve, you made a great kind of analysis on it one time where you were talking about like possible doesn't mean probable, right? And I think
Mm.
like
Mm,
that's the
preach.
power of possibility though, is just like what can happen and just showing people that there is a way. But and not to get like deep in all this type of stuff, but what you just said, Dr. Whiskey, like I think that there's a lot of like internal things, like what you just said is like what I have a hard time like seeing, because I guess for me, like I don't have that issue. I've always been able to kind of look at people and like experience their growth and understand that where you start isn't where you finish. And I feel like there's a lot of internal work that kind of goes through being able to see that in other people when you can
Yeah.
see that for yourself. So the fact that
Mm.
you've brought it up, is great. And it just shows an area of like, oh wow, like maybe that's an area that I need to revisit, right? And whether it's like reaching out to your siblings or people, whatever, but there is a lot of truth to that. Like the people closest to you, and they always say in business, right? Like your clients and the people that are going to end up supporting you are going to be like strangers, right? Like you're not going to get a lot of your family and friends to be your clients and things like that, just because it's too close, right? It's hard to
Mm.
separate
Yeah.
the personal from professional. And that is where I feel like a lot of people are having a hard time with how impactful social media is. And you're starting to see like the religion, the politics, and all this stuff kind of dive into the professional space. And then people are trying to figure out how to navigate that. And on LinkedIn specifically, I've always looked at it as like a human platform, right? I never looked at it as, professional platform, because we're people first, right? Before we're professionals, we're people. And I think going back to this whole unity thing, whether you want to dive into the whole LGBTQ or all these different labels that people are trying to use to be divisive, that's kind of the way that I've always looked at things, was from a human aspect. And it's a saying that I use all the time, but I think it's so true, especially in a situation like this. So many people are getting caught up in the pieces instead of focusing on the big picture. And that big picture is humanity. And everybody just has like a different experience and perspective on it. But in order for us to like move forward and work through a lot of these things, a lot of people, or I feel like more often than not, people need to be more willing to understand than trying to be right and prove their point. There's a book that I'm reading now called From Ideas to Impact, and it talks about like change in a divided world. And that's one of the things that I got to meet the author, and he said, Paul, you need to ask yourself, like, do you want to change the world or do you want to be right? Because more often than not, you can't have both. So that's what I would add.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
and I think what you said goes well with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Here in America, that was a big deal. I don't know if it reached the UK or not, but it's like I appreciate people were saying, like, so many people saw Charlie Kirk as like, as an icon, as this, that, and you had the people who were saying, well, he was also a person. He was a husband and a father, right? And you killed him over this icon that you made him. So it's upsetting. But my most frustrating, for me, the biggest frustration with everything we've talked about, if I were to bring it full circle, how is it that I'm allowed to have a gun, but I can't walk around with a sword on my back? Because I've always wanted to own swords and walk around with them. And I think it's crazy. It just boggles my mind that I can have firearms on me, but I can't have a sword. That just blows my mind. Like, it's just crazy.
Carla wants to say something.
Doesn't that boggle your mind that I can't have a claymore on my back, but I can have like multiple guns in my pockets or on my hips or my back? Like, I could have one under my hat.
Personally, both bother me. My dad was a police officer. I believe in people's right to bear arms. Do I carry a gun? No, that's my personal choice. My dad always said that once I became an adult, I should carry. My brother believed in carrying. God rest his soul. He's gone on to their home with them as well. But for me, that's just not my jam. That's not my thing. And probably that comes from my upbringing, seeing my dad with a machete in the home and also with the gun as a police officer. He always told us that guns were to kill. That is the purpose, and we were not to touch it. He would put it in the same place every day, high up on the shelf, and we knew not to climb up there and bother it. And we weren't even allowed to have water guns or Nerf guns. I wanted all that stuff, but he didn't know it until later, but my cousin Jimmy had all of that. So I still got to play with them and the cap guns and all that good stuff. But my parents did not believe in purchasing them because they said that was going to teach me that was okay to have and to use.
Yeah,
my dad said, when you point that at someone, you're pointing for a reason. It's not to scare them or to warn them. It is to kill. So I don't want to see anybody walking around with a machete, a knife, not even a butter knife, pointing it at me.
Well, that goes
or
with the video game culture too, with all these killing video games and the psychological studies on violent tendencies from people who play, these warfare video games. I think that kind of goes into like that. You're talking about the desensitization. If you have water guns and stuff, and you get familiar and it becomes normalized, the holding of a gun, the pointing it at someone, right? All the more easier if you have a real one. So like, it's interesting how it ties into the video game culture. You're not physically holding a gun. Maybe in some of these VR ones you have a prop gun, but it's like, I did a whole episode yesterday, I guess, on talking about the desensitization and the dehumanization of like on social media. Kids are growing up watching gore videos, people getting their heads cut off, people getting shot and stuff. And it's a meme to them. It's a joke. They think it's funny. Like I feel like we've really lost the value and respect around human life, right? We're watching these videos online and we've distanced ourselves from these strangers. We forget that they're people, right? And Steve said it best. One death is a tragedy, genocide is a statistic. You said something like that, and
Yeah, I
like
think Stalin said it. 1,000 deaths is a statistic. One death is a
right.
tragedy.
And social
We
media
just
has exemplified that by saying you're scrolling through, this guy's dead, that guy's dead, that guy's dead, right? And these kids think it's funny that they're growing up at 2 years old on an iPad seeing it, and it's just ridiculous. I think like Steve's generation, for example, I guess death was a scarier, more sacred topic because you weren't going around watching it online all the time. If someone died, it was like you were going to a funeral, like, or it was someone in your hometown and there was an obituary in the newspaper. It wasn't a joke. You know, like, I mean, not to say that death hasn't been joked about before, that there wasn't movies and TVs, but like, if people tracking what I'm saying.
Yeah, I wanted.
It depends on where you're
Yeah.
from, though, Mr. Whiskey. It didn't have to. It's not just the 2-year-olds and the little kids growing up now, because where I'm from, that became the norm. Where I'm from, kids were desensitized to that, and adults became desensitized to gun violence and deaths. I was in Washington, D.C., and in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. I taught drug and violence prevention for MedStar, which is a trauma unit of the Washington Hospital Center. I was a violence prevention consultant and coordinator and speaker, and I would go around to HMOs and I would go to juvenile detention centers and teach, and all the public schools in DC, and teach drug and violence prevention, because kids were getting too used to, and they were already desensitized to violence, because so many people were getting killed. It was a norm to hear that, oh, my cousin Mike got killed the other day. Oh, well, your cousin got killed? Oh, my cousin got killed last week. Yeah, they were shooting down at the corner store the other day. That became the normal conversation and the norm, to go to a funeral of kids under 18. And because a lot of them who were doing the shooting didn't expect to live much longer than that. I've had nephews killed. I've had one nephew killed sitting at the bus, not the bus stop, sitting at the subway stop, inside of the subway train with his mom and his 2 sisters, waiting to go get a haircut on the train the day before Easter.
Wow.
So it didn't just start. It's been around a long time.
Yeah.
But now with those video games that are being created and they're watching them, it's just, to me, it's just enhancing all that behavior and that mindset.
So there's something I wanted to add. I picked up on the with Carla sharing about our cousin, the one and the, we had the one and the same. We had the total opposites. And then Paul brought in the concept of context, the now, and I've got down the now and the then. Sometimes we've got, I mean, Chris and I were talking about this flag movement, and bringing up sort of emotions or feelings or sentiments of a time back then, and being reflected now. And Paul brought in the fact that there's a contextual element that makes them starkly different, and at the same time, it'd be interesting. Back then, I would deviate my route home because there's some kids on the corner hanging out, cussing, or just felt like if I walked by them, they would stop talking to each other and pick on me. So I would find another way home. That was back then. Now, that sentiment is pervasive. We've got technology that makes it that corner street situation that I could deal with in the context of me doing something different is now all around me. I pick up the newspaper, or I pick up a device, and it feels pervasive. And we know that the key components to depression are it's personal, pervasive, and I've got the other P. There's 3 Ps. Personal, pervasive, it's everywhere, permanent. It's like it's always going to be there. And if you're in an environment today where you feel maligned, alienated, and you have it feel it that it's you that they've singled out you for whatever reason. I'm not picking on why they picked you out, but you feel personally set upon, and it feels pervasive because everything that you look at media wise points to that, and it feels permanent because there's no way out of it. Then that's the on ramp to a depressive state, because how do you break free of that? I feel very blessed that we can have this kind of conversation in this platform on LinkedIn, and it's streamed to my Facebook page, but that's
Managers
neither
Who Lead,
there.
check it out.
And feel that it's like we're not sitting here putting the world to rights in the sense that we've got the answers, therefore, but we are bringing a conversation that we may have had in closed circles and said, you know what, I wouldn't say this in public, but this is what I think, or this is how I. So I definitely appreciate all of the input. Thank you, Chris, for being vulnerable and open. And it's your first time here, and bringing something heavy, weighty, but important to the space, because we all carry some elements of these situations with us, and I'm fixated by the US situation. I mean, I live there and I'm not there now, but from the outside looking in, and California in particular being the state it was, and living in San Diego being sort of a border city, the whole dynamic there, and having friends that are on both sides of the aisle, or both ends of the pole. It's not even the sides of the aisle make it sound like you can just walk across the aisle, but I think in some circles they are opposite ends of the pole, whereby, like we talked last week, there's the middle ground becomes a wasteland because nobody wants to ask the question like, what does this mean to you? Ask from a position of curiosity, or ask from a position of explain yourself. Don't just come out with a sound bite and leave it there as if I'm supposed to understand what that means.
Yeah, and I think
that way?
I haven't watched a lot of Charlie Kirk, but I feel like he was one of the people who did that, because like at least the one clip I saw of him, he asked a woman, he said, so you said you're queer. I want to ask from an understanding standpoint, what does that mean to you? Because when I was growing up, that was like a slur, it was an insult. So what's the context of how you're saying it now? What does it mean to you? So like a question like that, I felt like kind of reminds me of Paul. Like it wasn't like queer is right or wrong. It was like, what does it mean to you? Why and how are you using it? So I think, like Paul said, it's a definitely a great diffuser. So I agree. And like he said, like if you ask that question, the person has like no response, and they're like, well, like if you have no backing at all, it's like, well, you're just saying, like, kind of, I don't want to reiterate our conversation past, but like that, because I said so, it's like
parents.
Yeah. And I know like that's one reason I do respect my father, in the sense that he's still an alcoholic and he struggles, but his talking to me saying, don't drink, son. A lot of people who have alcoholic parents who tell them not to drink, they're like, well, you're a hypocrite. Look at what you're doing. How can you tell me not to drink? That's because some alcoholics say it from a controlling point, like, because I said so, because I'm telling you not to drink. My father said, it has destroyed my life. It is stronger than me. I cannot defeat it. I don't want you to suffer this same fate. But I've known some people whose parents were alcoholics, and it was like, well, why don't you want me to drink? Because I said so, and like, so the difference between like that, like the way I have my father's respect, or the way I respect my father despite his alcoholism, and can actually empathize with him, is because of his backing rather than just him saying so. It was like the do as I say, not as I do mentality. Like that's a terrible leadership mentality. People will really resent that.
Yeah. And I get to sort of land the plane, and we can go around the room as we do this. there is I you know the I go back to the one and the same, the total opposite, the now and the then, um the power of context, understanding the contextual situations, not just in terms of time, because that's why it's important to study history, because if you don't know history, you'll have a tendency to repeat it. And that can also sound cliched, but the repeating of history happens in the context of now. As a white supremacist in the 30s dealing with you know, blacks in the South, in the deep South of America, it's a very different context. They may have the same mindset, but the context is very different when you apply it today, with all of the ways that you can anonymize your hate. You can scattergun what you believe, and I put air quotes around believe, because you might be just saying that to spike an algorithm versus what you truly believe. And someone sits in a bar next to you or takes a train next to you, and you have a very different concept, but you'll be flaming or trolling that person on a device very easily, right? So context is important, and it comes all full circle in terms of the world being so small that when we think that we're on different coins, we're actually on the same coin but a different side, right? And we just need to take the time to flip over the coin, or look at the other side, or just get a sense as to there is much more. I always say there's always more to that connects us, and Carla's lineage is a testimony to that. There's so much more that connects us than separates us. And even just starting from that standpoint and taking the time to hold two competing ideas in your head at the same time is why we are, why the humans are top of the food chain, because we have a brain, and if we decide to use it and hold competing ideas at the same time and wrestle with them. And the wrestling doesn't necessarily mean it has to be physical, but there has to be an element of teasing out a position and then finding out, why am I doing this? If it's for the ultimate good of both of us, then long may the wrestling continue. If it's to put someone down so I can appear supreme to them, then that's always going to be short-lived, because someone's going to do it to you. It's just the way it goes. History's shown us that every supreme movement has been superseded, because they either got lazy in the supremacy, or it's just whatever. So I think the thing is to the collective is that we are so much more closer than we think we are, pretend to be, or situations pull us apart. I'll stop there. Final comments before we close up. I'm over the hour, but I want to hear around the room.
Paul, it would be you first. I mean, you're top left on my screen.
He's over here.
Yeah. I mean, this was a great discussion. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Steve, hear me? Okay. This was a great conversation. I enjoyed the different perspectives and context and experiences from everyone else. There was in Hawaii, it was so interesting because when you look at it on a map, we're like this little like dot or like speck, right, way far from everything else. And I remember like there was kind of a saying that said like it was a reminder that the world is such a small place, and a lot of times like it just takes a dot or one speck to make a difference. And the biggest thing for me that I really took from this conversation is the importance of just seeking understanding, and the connection is, everybody thinks that it has to be this big thing, right? But it's like, I'm sure a lot of us to some extent can relate to what Carla said, right? Like that connection that she met with somebody who, was like a random person, and she comes to find out that they're probably family. I've had so many of those experiences online, and it's just a reminder that connections built personally before professionally, and that's why these conversations are so fun. Is you really get to learn about who people are behind the profile.
Yeah, amen. Behind the profile, the person behind the profile.
Are we going around clockwise?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
That'd be me.
I'll turn the other. I'll turn the other way.
As the
and look at
British
you,
say,
Chris.
anti-clockwise.
It has been, just unexpected, really. The different perspectives here, and I just really want to. I think what I wanted to say. This isn't as personal as Carla, but it's a similar vein to. I watched some of the London 2012 Olympics opening ceremony. It was on YouTube, and it was like any Olympic opening ceremony, fiercely patriotic. But and the Union Jack was everywhere, and what it meant at that point was just an incredible amount of heritage, an incredible kind of tapestry that our country at the time was. It almost had me in tears, really, thinking what we could have been, what this could have meant, I think if somehow we can get back to understanding what unites us in the United Kingdom or in the United States, then there's just so much more hope. That's it, really.
That's cool.
Thanks a
I'm
lot.
going to become president and sign an executive order to rename everything to divided states, divided kingdom. I'm renaming it. That'd be great.
The divisive states.
The DSA. Welcome to the DS.
Yeah, I think, to your point, Mr. Yates, I got a cross. I'm mirrored. I got a cross up over there, right? And just like a flag, people have used it for all kinds of different meanings,
True.
for their own personal agendas. That's with anything. I think to combine Paul's point and Ms. Hooker's point, be careful who you kiss, because they might just be your cousin. That's the takeaway I got. Be careful who you kiss; they might be your cousin. Or maybe that's a good thing. Depends where you are. But I think that Steve, Mr. Wright, you said context, and that to me is more important now than ever before. There's a lot of stuff I've seen on social media, because you'll just get these clips, right? Like, for example, I can't believe Trump said that, right? And then you look at, well, what was he saying? Oh, well, now it makes more sense. Or you look at, it could even be a clip from me. It might just, the only thing someone takes away from this might be a clip of me saying to kiss your cousin. I think context is so important, because I think that's one of the things I harp on with, I've done a lot of episodes on church hurt, on the legalization and weaponization of religion, right? And a lot of it is, we call it cherry picking, right? People take a quote, boom, this is what it means. Well, hold on. In the context, this is what it means. I've had that in my own personal life, where people took quotes, and luckily I've read the whole Bible. I studied it, and I'm currently trying to learn Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, right? And so when people come at me with a quote, I'm fortunate enough to be like, well, hold on. If you took that by itself, yes, I could see why you say that, but you forgot the rest of the sentence, so it's anything. But I think with social media, I've even caught myself catching just a clip of a sermon, a clip of a speech from a president or a politician, and being like, I can't believe they said that. And then you look at like the rest of the sentence or this or that, and it's like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So it's so important. But unfortunately, I was looking at the recent studies on attention span, and Paul, what you talked about Hawaii, that little tiny speck on the map, that's like the attention span of like Gen Z, Gen Alpha. It's like it was down to like 12 seconds, I believe. It was like 12 seconds or less. And it's like ridiculous. So yeah, I just think context is so important. And then something I've shared before with, male sexual assault prevention and women's sexual assault prevention, Timothy Winnicky on my episode, he shared telling your story without diminishing others, right? We see a lot of people who are victimizing, villainizing, blaming. You can tell your story and advocate for change without having to put down groups of people. We've even talked on this platform about different men who put forward the same messages of masculinity, but one of them puts down women and one of them has nothing to do with women. It just has to do with the self, right? So I think there's a way to tell all of our stories and make that change without diminishing others, but just focusing on the positive parts and the impact that needs to be made. And I think that ties into moving forward rather than looking at the past. I think that victimization, that villainization, a lot of that is focusing on the past. So that's my bit.
Like that. Well said about getting our stories out there. Carla, I'll give you the last word here.
Well, it's been interesting. I'm thankful again for the opportunity, Steve. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Whiskey, for your perspective on things. I'm glad to be here and glad to share mine. It makes me piggyback on my book, not the one behind me, but that's the change, and we all can change. So I guess I will say that one also. But my book that is about to be released with Les Brown, and it's I Ain't Never Been Ordinary, Nor Have You. And it's 10 childhood lessons for an extraordinary adulthood. And I'm just going to say this. I'm not going to keep plugging it, but it ties into what we've been discussing. And I don't want, without giving the book away, but Les Brown said it changed his life. So to me, that's enough to make you check it out when it's released soon. And
Are pre-orders out now? Can we pre-order it?
If you'd like to pre-order, I'm going to let you, Mr. Whiskey, have the first pre-order. Yes.
Oh, thank you. No, I was trying to plug for other people, but yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah. Don't forget, Ms. Hooker. I don't know if you're aware of this, but you're going to be one of the co-authors of a book that Steve and I are piloting together. So it's going to feature everyone.
I didn't know that.
Drop anything. Yeah. So
Steve didn't know either. No,
this is another one of your jokes, Mr. Whiskey.
No. This is a real project that's
Are you
happening. We're
speaking
making Steve and I are working on a book together that's going to feature everyone from the water
at the water cooler.
Cultivate the lessons, but it's going to be in his 7th year of his 12-week year cycle. So.
Oh, you prophesying? Okay, I got it.
It does say weeping prophet on me.
I got it.
Oh, now it says weeping prophet on me. So.
But thanks, Carlo, because we've talked about that, and to Mr. Whiskey's point about being able to, or his guest's point about being able to share your story without diminishing others. That was a big takeaway from our discussion, Carlo, in terms of your identification as the sickle cell warrior and the thalassemia thriver. Those are parts of your story that don't diminish others. It actually kind of it allows for it to stand on its own. And I think that's a big takeaway. We've got to find spaces where we can share stories, be heard, feel safe to be heard, without being cut down or maligned or taken out of context. And I just want to thank you all. This has been great. It's there's nothing else I can say really.
Steve, were there any podcasts you were recently on that you might want to plug?
I want to plug my marketing advisor there. I have got a great show actually lined up for release tomorrow with Sven Masterson.
Not your show. I asked if you have been on anyone else's show recently.
Oh.
Are you kidding me, Steve?
Let me finish
one your show every day.
The other one. I have a great show with Sven Masterson coming out on Thursday. Again, around the journey of men. And he's a sort of midlife men's coach, and brings up some really poignant areas, which has been insightful. Not he works with men, but the premise is not exclusively male. And then the other thing, that an exciting thing I was so jazzed about, was that I got to spend some real podcast quality time with Mr. Whiskey down there. And it was absolutely a blast. I'm sure he's gonna have to edit it because we went on for like 6 hours.
There was a lot of inside jokes, and I was like, I'm gonna have to cut these all out. We mentioned Paul. I'm pretty sure we mentioned Carla. We mentioned Justin Workman, Will Ortiz, Yaya coming out. We had to shout out all the
It was a
homies.
shout out to the who's who.
I
Yeah,
gotta
Paul
hear
and I
this.
are gonna record in person soon here. Yeah, and Steve and I are
Email
starting
that
a
to me. I wanna
band.
hear
I'm
that.
learning how to play the lyre, and he plays different types of drums. So
A
we're gonna
band.
get some.
We
fun
got
stuff
we got
going.
music. We got music in common.
Yeah,
but,
and we're both soccer athletes.
Yeah, but that's great. I'm going to call it there. It's out at night. It's a 90-minute show. So thank you for those watching on live or replay. Check it out. I'll be sharing. I'll get some. There's some clips here without necessarily taking things out of context, but I think there's definitely some highlights here with regards to your everyone sharing. I'll share it internally with us first before going out anywhere on any platforms, just to respect your
Big one with
privacy.
happy birthday, Steve. Happy 62nd birthday. You don't look
I'll be called
you
out.
don't look 4 days older than 62. You know that?
There you go. There you go. You've got to enjoy. You got to enjoy life where it meets you. Enjoy life where it meets you. And on that note, I'm going to wish you all a very good
Happy birthday,
afternoon, evening, wherever you're joining us. Chris,
Birthday.
thanks again so much, bro. It's
Thanks.
great to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
And let's end the stream right there. So
Okay. Thank you.
great. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Have a great Wednesday.
Bye.
You're welcome. Bye bye.